Hi, I'm Torte de Lini. Finally, a patch that is out during the European time zone, thank God. However, looks like patch 7.38b is out, and I'm going to call it the everything else patch because basically 7.38b seeks to kind of fix up some mistakes or some things they hadn't considered that occurred in 7.38, but more importantly, it also has them consider the fact that they forgot a lot of items they could have fixed up in 7.37e, as well as some heroes like Abaddon, Lifestealer, Dragonite, Glimmer Cape. So a lot of nerfs are on the board. Let's take a look. So one of the big changes I think that everybody started noticing towards the end of 7.37e was that Glimmer Cape was maybe a bit too viable or too valuable for a lot of heroes that you would otherwise never consider it on, like Huskar, like Phantom Assassin, heroes that wanted the magic resistance that you would otherwise only get from BKB, typically for core heroes, which was about 50% of magic resistance. However, with the Glimmer Cape, you would have a consistent 20%, plus you would have the magic resistance barrier or magic damage barrier. But on top of that, you also got movement speed. You also got a relatively low cheap mana cost, gave you some invisibility. So there was a lot of value packed into what it was supposed to be a support item, ended up becoming a very popular core item at a relatively low cost as well, especially towards the late game. So with Glimmer Cape here now we can see, let me point that way. Glimmer Cape now we can see the bonus movement speed has reduced from 40 to 20, which is still not as great. And evidently the big change here is the Glimmer mana cost increased from 90 to 125. So 90 was something that some cores could definitely get away with. 125 it feels like an actual commitment for a lot less movement speed. So maybe not the dream come true that it once was. Another change I want to make a mention for is Orb of Corrosion and the Orb of Frost. So heroes like, let's say, Slark, Lifestealer, I've seen it on. I've even seen it on like Anti-Mage, Ember Spirit. A lot of people are picking up Orb of Corrosion, especially if they're agility heroes. PA is another one, because it gave you an agility bonus with its new recipe, which was Orb of Frost, Blightstone, and I think the Band of Elven Skin, which was an agility item. So you have great last hitting potential before your boots even came online, or before you even had power treads or boots, in other words. And the Orb of Corrosion here also gave you a lot of offensiveness early on that you otherwise wouldn't have, and that's why we saw a lot of supports that gave slows, like Crystal Maiden, like Silencer, like Jakiro, paired really well with these otherwise passive safe laners, now more offensive. So the Orb of Corrosion here has a little bit less of agility bonus, still pretty good, and the Corrosion melee movement slow has been increased from 6 to 8%. So if anything, I would still be buying this item to give you that offensiveness in the laning stage, especially against certain offlaners, and to give good security for you as the +1 carry. Oh boy, it's a rough one out there, boys, for Abaddon players. Good luck with this one. First of all, your base mana regen is decreased from 0.25 to 0. So those who were buying null talismans are a little bit ahead of the curve, but now your mana regen is even less than before, which is unfortunate. For everyone else who doesn't like Abaddon, this is fantastic because the laning stage is going to be a little bit easier, especially since they nerfed Aphrodite Shield from a 17-second duration to 14. That means you're going to be utilizing it a lot less to farm, or rather you won't be able to be as efficient with it as farming. More importantly, the cooldown between the two Aphrodite Shields when you first cast it and then the second one right after is obviously going to be a little bit longer. And more importantly, it means during the laning stage that Abaddon doesn't feel as safe since he doesn't have Aphrodite Shield covering him from any kind of damage he would be usually incurring. Another really big fear here is the Mist Coil. Obviously the damage heal has been decreased pretty significantly, so usually you max it out last. So at 325 you're doing some pretty decent nuke damage at a pretty far range. Don't forget the Ag Shard for Abaddon relies on Mist Coil damage plus your regular attack damage and all the effects that you would incur, such as Curse of Avernus, such as Orb of Corrosion, etc. So a little bit unfortunate to see that the Mist Coil damage has been reduced, as well as the cast range has also been set at a 625. So definitely doesn't have that range that we truly loved before. Other than that, Aphrodite Shield also having its duration decreased from 15 to 12, just in case you didn't choose Mephitic Shroud, which some people are still not doing, surprisingly. As well as the mana cost being increased, with your base mana regen being decreased, means that you're really going to be suffering during the lane stage as Abaddon. Typically, Abaddon felt relatively safe, maybe even inoffensive, depending on the lineup. Here, he's going to be a lot more scared and has a lot less resources to be able to survive without the Aphrodite Shield, and more importantly, without being able to cast as many Aphrodite Shields, because it's quite mana intensive, and now even more so than before at the first levels. Lastly, Borrowed Time Aghanim Scepter radius changed from 900 to Mist Coil's cast range. It's also a pretty massive nerf. It makes it so even if you're playing support Abaddon and you get the ag scepter towards the mid late game, it's just not going to be as all encompassing. And you have to really make sure that you're more towards the middle of a fight rather than just hanging out in the back for kicks. Well, boys, it was long overdue. Dragonite has finally seen its end of its reign. Maybe. The Fire Dragon Dragon Tail AoE, while in Dragon form, has been decreased from 175 to 100, which is quite significant, right? It's almost a 50% drop, if not more. And then Worm's Wrath magic damage on attacks decreased from 10, 20, 30, 40 to 6, 12, 18, 24. So really a big steep in reduction, especially at the last levels for Dragonite. It means that he's farming a lot less efficiently. It means he's not an automatic win for any fight he takes on, because the damage source of his, the magic damage source of his attacks is not as prevalent to ignoring that armor and being as concerning towards the mid game, especially for the Dragonite to pick up Mask of Madness, Sanjayasha, all these attack speeds that really amplify the amount of damage he would be typically dealing, especially at the last levels, right? Worm's Wrath is typically the first ability that you max, so Dragonite being able to farm that quickly with magic damage at 40 is pretty insane. 40 magic damage on top of your regular attacks, by the way. So Dragonite is officially, I would say, maybe this is the end for him, but I'm sure he'll pop out one way or another, just because having really, really safe lane core heroes is the name of the game this patch and the previous patch as well. So if your takeaway on Invoker is that you don't know what the hell he is now, you can see Invoker in three main ways. One, he's back to his original kind of spellcasting Dazzle Man that kind of plays the main character syndrome of your match. He pretty much can do everything towards the late game. Your goal as Invoker is to hit the super late game where you're just spiraling out of control in damage and spells and low cooldown on your invoke innate ability, etc. Now Invoker here, these facets don't really matter. The Scholar of Korix and the Mind of Tyrannus, I'm going to mispronounce those. The one that was really popular was the Agent of Galarin. And as you guessed it, the reason why for that is because it relied on your Exhort, I believe, Exhort ability and spell. And basically it was all your damage. It raised your intelligence and it raised your damage with each level in Exhort. And the Sunstrike was, as you can see, the Sunstrike was 60 seconds. Now it's 75 seconds. I still think it's pretty short, pretty insane. So pretty much the build for Invoker players was like Midas Boot to Travel, pretty much just push lanes and sit around forever. And then once you hit 15-20, you'd get the Ag Scepter into, yeah, I don't know, Refresh Octarine Core, for example, or BKB or Sight Device. These really insane late game items that only an Invoker player who's just farming out of his mind and just kind of stalling out the game by pushing the lanes could get away with. So they really nerfed Invoker towards his mid to late game value, but honestly the Ag Scepter Cataclysm as a non-Invoker player was harrowing, so to speak. It was pretty nightmarish to deal with, so I'm glad to see that's been nerfed. Forge Spirit as well is another thing that extends from your Exhort. The attack range has been rescaled as well, now being a lot better, slightly better in the early game, right, from 300 to 305, 360, 365 to 360, and then it gets weaker towards the end, right? So 885 is now 800. So first level is a little bit better. After that, it just goes from shit to better flush that quickly. So I just put out a video recently on the best position 5 heroes to play, and Jakiro was on it. I felt Jakiro was probably one of the easiest and most insane heroes to play. I didn't understand how they gave a hero that had only one real issue, which was movement speed, now has 3 abilities that do insane nuke and DPS damage. And it looks like they've taken my feedback to heart fairly quickly, or they already knew this problem. So Icebreaker with an ice path duration decreased from 6 to 5 seconds. Okay, a little bit weaker. I'm really not that bothered about it. Most Jakiro players are going Yules anyway, so you still got a pretty long duration of CCing the key enemy that you wanted to anyway. And the cooldown has been increased from 18 to 20 seconds and 11 seconds at the last level. So it's fine. It's not great. It's just fine. The level 15 talent here that they changed it, minus 1.5 seconds Ice Path cooldown, replaced with 60 plus 60 Ice Path damage. That's also something that is at least pretty significant, right? Because the cooldown on Ice Path, even when you think a Doctrine, was very short. So it's nice to see that it's been completely removed entirely, right? 9 seconds minus 1.5 is what, 7.5 seconds, and then you pretty much have the duration stuck for 4.5 seconds, and you would freeze anybody for 2 seconds. Plus you can pop it when you had Icebreaker, and you had the Yule, so you can pretty much almost Ice Path someone almost immediately. So good to see that they changed that, because it was pretty insane. The plus 60 Ice Path base damage, kind of indifferent about it. It's nice to get even more damage on it on the one ability that didn't have it, but it's definitely not my go-to. However, I also think plus 50 liquid fire attack speed slow. Most of the time, I'm not really attacking as Jakiro, except towards the later part of the fight when I've used up all my abilities or I'm completely out of position. But who knows, right? A lot of people were choosing -2 dual breath cooldown, if I recall. It used to be the plus 150 attack range, so the plus 50 liquid fire attack speed slow could be justified if you pick that 150 attack range at level 10. However, not quite sure. I think people will still choose the Ice Path base damage. Okay, is anybody surprised Lifestealer has been nerfed? I mean, quite frankly, this hero was pretty insane. He's one of my favorite heroes as well, so I'm not trying to be biased whatsoever. Base agility decreased by 4 because you go orbital corrosion anyway, so that's all negligible. Well, negligible not really, but your attack speed is reduced at least early on, especially when you don't have enough or any points in your what's that ability called, that passive one, Ghoul Frenzy. Not gonna edit that out. We're just doing this shit live. The other part for Lifestealer is the Flesh Feast has been nerfed. There's Gore Storm, which most people were not picking just because honestly the Flesh Feast scaling was pretty wild. Any kills that you got were insane. You'd have 55 HP increase, so by the late game you had more than 3,000 just walking around absolutely decimating people, especially since Lifestealer mostly goes Radiance anyway, so having all that HP makes Radiance all the more potent. So max HP has been significantly reduced. Early on it's completely fine, but at level 4 from 55 to 35 is a steep decline, which makes the hero a lot more killable. Probably especially so when I see that the Infest here, Aghanim Scepter no longer disarms targeted enemy heroes, which is huge. And Aghanim Scepter attack rate improved from 1.25 to 1. Honestly, you didn't really pick Infest. You didn't really get the Aghanim Scepter Infest for the attack rate improved, for an attack rate of 1.25 or 1, whatever. You really did it for 1. It was a way to avoid obviously taking damage and obviously deal damage with Radiance and your regular attack. And then 2 was the fact you could disarm a very key specific hero right through BKB. So the fact that it doesn't disarm anymore means that I think Lifestealer goes back to no longer being all that interesting. Quite frankly, it does reduce the cooldown on Infest, I think, by like 20 seconds. So there is still some viability in the idea that you can use it to dodge or use it to kind of survive in a fight and get some life back. But yeah, the fact that it's not disarming anybody means that, you know, it means that they just keep playing on with you inside them, which is pretty much what all pregnant mothers are doing anyways outside in real life. So Mirana is probably one of the more noticeable popular heroes as a support hero, or even as a core if you want to play her. I don't recommend it. However, the Starstruck facet blind duration decreased from 4.55 to 3 seconds is a very welcome change, because the blind is pretty insane. I think it's something like 60% mischance. So having a 5-second mischance from Starstorm, which had an insane low cooldown of like 12 seconds, was absolute batshit. So glad that they nerfed it. Very much needed. So I don't think most people are going to be talking about this, but Nature's Prophet losing his Ag Scepter for Wrath of Nature, but on top of that, losing his level 20 Sprout leashes by a Wrath of Nature cooldown is a significant nerf. Nature's Prophet would have been a very interesting hero to pick for, let's say, against Slark. However, seeing that the talent no longer, level 20 talent no longer Sprout leashes, means that the hero is kind of falling to the wayside in terms of viability. I mean, I still think Nature's Prophet having that pretty insane damage that he gets with Ironwood Treant facet is fantastic. However, yeah, it's pretty much a bummer at 20 to lose that leash, because it's very significant for a lot of heroes that just easily have ways to escape or maneuver out of your trees. Finally, Night Stalker has been nerfed. I personally never abused this hero because I didn't like him, but quite frankly, the Night Rain facet in 7.38 was pretty wild. They gave you a free level in Hunter in the Night. I see they nerfed it again from 16. Again. I see they nerfed it from 16 to 10%, and then it resumes back to its normal. So the first level that you get for free of Night Rain of Hunter in the Night gives you some bonus value, so it still makes Night Stalker's laning stage the easiest it's ever been. However, now it's a little more feasible. I don't think so, but what do I know? On top of that, they also nerfed the level 10 talent for Dark Ascension duration. So Night Stalker, in short, basically has a little bit less of a successful early game up to level 10, level 12. That said, I still think he's very strong. So Tidehunter has been pretty much a good, stable pos 3 initiator and hero that people have been playing more and more offensively with Vladimir's Offering, with Mage Slayer, Blink and Axe Shard. We can see the Anchor Smash has been reduced pretty hard too. You can see that from 30, 40, 50, 60% down to 40%. So he's no longer the go-to hero to nerf a lot of damage that you would seek out to against Dragonites, against Lifestealer if he hadn't raged already. If he had already raged, pretty brutal nerf, 60 to 40%. I'm not sure people are gonna still play Tidehunter, but I could be wrong. He still has a lot of validity to what he does. The Dead in the Water nerf as well is also pretty significant. A 30 mana increase for a hero that has almost no mana at all periods of the game is very unfortunate. The damage decrease from 200 to 100. I think it's kind of negligible. Nobody's really focusing on the damage, in my honest opinion, but that goes without saying. So if you haven't been paying attention to the meta, I'm sure you've taken a full tree trunk to the face at some point and realized that Tiny is actually very strong still. They nerfed his crash landing facet at 7.38. However, in 7.38b, they also nerfed his grow bonus armor. Grow has also been nerfed in 7.38 by, I think, removing or outright reducing the toss bonus damage, if I recall. Or maybe I'm wrong there. Nonetheless, reducing his armor there is actually to make him a little more killable. The issue was that just because they nerfed his crash landing, they still made the hero very strong because of his insurmountable facet has been buffed, right? The slow resistance that you get from insurmountable is now also also reduces the impact of attack speed slow. So the hero hits hard, hits fast, can't be slowed. If you attack him, you also have your attack speed slowed, I think, through Craggy Exterior innate ability. No, you have your damage reduced per stack every time you attack him when he has Craggy Exterior innate ability. So kind of wild. Excuse me, just a correction there, by the way. Grow toss bonus damage was not nerfed, but the toss was nerfed overall, and then crash landing was also nerfed. And obviously Kanda's no longer top popular for Tiny. So in essence, they nerfed his armor pretty huge from 24 to 15, so now he actually has to buy armor, maybe like an Assault Cuirass, or buy some agility as well if you want to get a little less armor than that. Makes Tiny actually killable for once, finally, thank God. What you would see is usually Tinies go like, I don't know, he would go like Echo Saber Shard, Blink, Revenant's Brooch, I think. Or if you didn't want the Revenant's Brooch, maybe San Xiasha into Daedalus. So he didn't even have to focus on having any real survivability. He had everything he wanted. Natural strength growth, which means a lot of health. A lot of great ways to avoid status resistance, as well as taking any real damage due to Craggy Exterior, as well as insurmountable, preventing attack slows and movement slow. And then the armor from Grow made him pretty unkillable. So now, pretty good. At least now he's almost killable. We'll see. Last changes before went to Wyvern. Venomancer slow decreased from 50 to 35, 40, 45, 50. Pretty insane change because Venomancer having 50% Venomous Gale has been one of the longest standing great spells of our time. 50% slow was always absolutely bonkers. I can't believe it stayed in the game for so many years. But now seeing that it has scaling from 35 to 50 is unfortunate, but long overdue in my honest opinion. Okay, Recursive, the great ability that cores and support Winter Wyverns loved and pretty much made it one of the best heroes to play as a support hero, has been nerfed. No longer amplify physical, magical, and pure damage taken from Winter Wyvern, which is great because I've even had support Winter Wyverns build all sorts of bullshit items just to whoop my ass with Recursive. However, on top of that, Winter's Cursed, the cursed target is no longer immune to physical damage from Winter Wyvern and her controlled units, so you can still auto attack with your Arctic Burn. And the cooldown has been increased from 85 to 180 seconds at the last level. So earlier on, you can't use Winter's Curse as much, but later on, it's almost negligible, a 5-second change. So Winter Wyvern, a little less offensive, a little less capable of pretty much securing the game or securing the lead in the early game with her ganks and her ultimates. That said, I think she's still very good.